sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris, very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Administrator Eiler, for your work every day, and I thank the mayor for hosting us today. I appreciate it. I know he's doing his job as New Jersey State Senator and Budget Chairman, so it's an important job. I am told by the chief and company here that there is a pistol range for the police officers here, so those pops you're hearing, don't worry about it. They're practicing, so that's all good. I'm glad to be back in Woodridge with, as I say, Business Administrator Eiler, Chief O'Donnell, Bergen County Sheriff Curriton, and Chief Caggiano from the New Jersey Association Chiefs of Police. Also appreciate that we have some citizens who have, if I can get the list here somewhere in the midst of all of the stuff that was put down. Well, I will get it to you. We'll introduce them at some point. I don't have the names here right now, but some of our constituents, I think Maureen Nally is here. Maureen is here, and we also have one other person. So we appreciate you coming forth to share your story because a personal experience helps us to warn others and raise public awareness. So very much appreciate your willingness to come forward. And hopefully with the help of these stories and of our leaders in local law enforcement, we hope to use every tool available to turn the tide of this epidemic of catalytic converter theft. And we're here today because the word epidemic perfectly describes what we're experiencing. Earlier this month, thieves in South Brunswick stole catalytic converters from 30 vehicles in the span of 10 days. That's 3 per day in a town of less than 50,000 people. In Hackettstown, police are investigating the theft of 18 catalytic converters from Amazon trucks parked on the same street. And here in Bergen County, thieves have targeted several municipalities, including Teaneck, Elmwood Park, Glen Rock, and more. To me, that's an epidemic. And these are 3 simple reasons, and there are 3 simple reasons why it's happening. 1, it's too easy. Brazen criminals are often stealing them in broad daylight. 2, it's cheap. You don't need sophisticated tools to take them from underneath a car. And 3, unfortunately, it pays. Rare metals in catalytic converters allow them to be flipped for hundreds of dollars in profit. This perfect storm is the reason why our state legislature in Trenton recently imposed new restrictions on the sale and purchase of catalytic converters. It's the reason why 34 law enforcement agencies across the Garden State will soon receive federal help to invest in its automated license plate recognition technology. These federal grants were made possible by the State Fiscal Recovery Fund that I wrote in the American Rescue Plan 2 years ago. At the height of the pandemic, I pushed my colleagues to authorize direct, flexible assistance for states, counties, and municipalities. Those closest to the people they represent tend to know what their communities need the most. And so now, 2 years later, that advocacy is bearing fruit as police departments in New Jersey use federal dollars to invest in crime and auto theft reduction. But if there's one piece of evidence to focus our attention on catalytic converters, it's last year's federal takedown of a major nationwide theft ring. In November, the Department of Justice announced the arrest of 21 individuals across 9 states, including here in New Jersey, for their connection to a nationwide network of thieves, dealers, and processors. According to FBI Director Way, the alleged leaders and associates made off with hundreds of millions of dollars in stolen catalytic converters. In their wake, they left behind countless innocent Americans who had to pay several $1,000s each for the damage done to their car. Last year's federal bust of a major national organized theft ring is a wake-up call to all of us, and it's clear we have to do more to crack down on this crime. We need to increase public awareness. We have to update our laws when needed. We have to provide law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to deter this crime, and then share these best practices across federal, state, and local partners. Which brings me to today's announcement. Today I'm introducing legislation in the United States Senate that requires the Attorney General and the Secretary of Transportation to establish a federal catalytic converter task force. This special body, composed of state and local law enforcement, D-N.J employees from their criminal division, and employees of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, would assess laws and regulations currently on the books and recommend steps to crack down on catalytic converter theft. It's a task force designed to be holistic because this is a crime that spans multiple jurisdictions. While the recent actions taken in New Jersey are a strong step towards reducing this costly theft, we know that thieves operate across state lines. We see them come here to Bergen County and then drive across the George Washington Bridge or through the tunnel to sell catalytic converters in New York and other states. To turn the tide on this multi-jurisdictional theft, we need to bring people out of their silos and get them working together on solutions. We need law enforcement agencies, advocates and insurers, car dealers and manufacturers to all be on the same page. And we need the public to know that catalytic converter theft is a major issue affecting far too many Americans across the country. It shouldn't take thousands of innocent victims so far, and potentially thousands more in the future, to stop this epidemic in its tracks. Like any epidemic, we just need to be vigilant. We need to marshal the full power of the federal government to deter would-be criminals. We need to prosecute those who are trafficking in catalytic converters and protect at-risk car owners from those who would do them harm. Now, I recognize that certain things may fall outside our capacity to affect them. Supply chain disruptions of the pandemic, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, higher demand for rare metals have all made catalytic converters an attractive target for theft. But regardless of what's outside of our control, what we can do is bring a more concerted effort to bear. We can work to disrupt the flow of stolen catalytic converters to scrapyards, who will pay. Through my task force legislation, we can learn what further areas need attention to stem the epidemic. And through more folks working in more areas on this issue, we can better protect car owners from thieves. As I said, these crimes are not victimless. They leave behind parents who need to pick up their kids from school, ER nurses who need to work an overnight shift, and thousands of Americans left stranded on the hook for expensive repairs. One such American is Robert Thomas, who lives just a few towns away in Elmwood Park. A retiree, Robert tried to start his car one morning and heard a loud, grinding noise. When he checked underneath the vehicle, he saw a piece of metal on the ground. As it turned out, thieves had sawed off his car's catalytic converter overnight. When the police showed up, they informed him that he wasn't the only victim that same night. And days later, when the repair shop came back with an estimate, the quote for this little piece here was nearly $4,000. Simply put, it's disgusting that someone would do this to another individual, costing them time, money, and the aggravation of dealing with a stolen converter. As a senior senator for New Jersey, I've made it my career's work to keep New Jerseyans safe, fighting for them every time they've needed a champion. Catalytic converter theft is simply the next frontier in this fight. So I want to thank all of our partners who are here today in support and bringing their expertise. And I want to encourage my colleagues, several who have already signed up with me in the Senate, so that we can stop this cowardly act. Let me just, because I know that we're being covered through our friends in Spanish television, through our feed, and say a few words, and then we'll introduce our next guest. Estamos aquí hoy para el propósito de combatir la lucha en contra del robo de convertidores catalíticos. Estos convertidores catalíticos es fácil de alguien robar, pero cuesta algunas veces hasta $4,000 de reponer. Por los materiales que tienen adentro, los que están robando los compran y entonces lo venden por lo roban y lo venden por cientos de dólares. Pero la realidad, la consecuencia al víctima son miles de dólares. En adición del problema de perder un día de trabajo, de no poder recoger los niños en la escuela, en tantas otras cosas. Así que hemos visto tantos robos en el estado Jardín y una redada nacional nos enseña que esto es un problema nacional. Recogieron más de 21 personas el Departamento de Justicia en 9 estados. La realidad es que vemos que quiere decir que esto no tiene frontera en la lucha en contra del robo de los convictores catalíticos. Tenemos que dar un esfuerzo federal y nuestro esfuerzo hoy de crear un grupo de trabajo federal para combatir estos robos es un paso adelante para proteger nuestros ciudadanos. With that, let me find my cheat sheet here. Do we have a list in here? Okay, it's underneath everything else. Okay. So, we're thrilled to have with us the Woodridge Chief of Police, Michael O'Donnell, who will share some of his own experience. Chief?
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Chief O'Donnell of the Woodridge Police Department. On behalf of the Borough of Woodridge, I want to welcome everyone here this morning. Welcome to Senator Menendez, Sheriff Curidan, Chief David Murphy, our other law enforcement officials, and of course our elected officials. We're happy to have Senator Menendez here today to address what has become not only a local issue and crime trend, but something that has grown statewide. Catalytic converter thefts impact our law enforcement agencies, our residents, and all our communities. New Jersey is currently ranked number 5 in the nation in catalytic converter thefts. In Bergen County alone, we had 944 catalytic converter thefts in 2022 and 386 so far in 2023. This is not an issue that local law enforcement can take on alone. We need the legal backing and the strong legislation that bills like the one we'll hear about today provide for our law enforcement officers. So I want to thank our elected officials, our Woodridge Mayor and Senator Paul Sarlo, and Senator Bob Menendez for their unwavering support for law enforcement and for giving us the tools and the resources we need to properly do our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, very much for your expertise as part of our effort here. Let me introduce the Vice President of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police and the Montville Township Police Department Chief, Andrew Caggiano.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. The theft of catalytic converters continues to be a widespread issue throughout New Jersey. These crimes are costing our residents thousands of dollars for repairs on their vehicles. The New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police are proud to support his legislation and hope that this task force created will assist both state, local law enforcement in our efforts to prevent, detect, and prosecute these offenders. So I applaud Senator Menendez for this legislation, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the support as well. The Vice President of the Bergen County Police Chiefs Association and the Chief of the Wyckoff Police Department, Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. I'd like to thank Senator Menendez for allowing us to be in attendance for this addressing this extremely important issue. These thefts have been occurring here in our area as well as across the country at a staggering rate. Catalytic converters are targeted due to their contents of precious metals and the cost paid by illicit metal buyers. They are easily accessible, but unfortunately very costly to replace for the victims. The replacement costs are upwards of a few $1,000s, and as you heard the senator say before, $4,000 plus. And this doesn't take into account the time loss for the victim of not having their vehicle that's usable. Moving forward, we need to work hand in hand with lawmakers to combat this problem. Together with the right partnerships, communications, and awareness, we can begin to make an impact on reducing theft. So again, Senator, thank you for this. We appreciate all the work you do for us.
Well, thank you, Chief. Thank you for your work. And now our Bergen County Sheriff, Anthony Curidan.
morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the great senator for his work in addressing these matters that have affected Bergen County and then on a nationwide front. But as a sheriff of Bergen County, my goal is to protect nearly 1 million residents and the thousands of daily visitors from being victimized. The Bergen County Sheriff's Office will continue to elaborate and work cooperatively with our local, county, state, and federal law enforcement partners to reduce the reoccurrence of crime in our community. Again, I'd like to thank the senator. But to effectively do this, there needs to be measures that define who may sell and purchase the catalytic converters, ensure that the sellers are verified owners of part vehicles, and they require a traceable payment method for transactions. The measures should also include fines, penalties, and for those convicted of knowingly and willfully violating these requirements. The new measures are intended, or should be intended, to decentralize black market operation, dissuade further theft. With the rising inflation, most families cannot afford to replace their stolen catalytic converter. A report from the National Insurance Crime Bureau found that owners pay, as indicated by the senator, $4,000, but pay $1,000 to $3,000 out of pocket to fix their vehicles. In the interim, we in law enforcement ask that residents please park your vehicle in a well-lit area next to a public entrance, regularly move your car, and use a closed garage. It'd be a great idea to install an anti-theft device, install motion surveillance and cameras in your parking area. This is an epidemic, as the senator had indicated, and together and collectively we can combat this. Thank you very much, Senator. Again, thank you for your great work.
Well, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sheriff, I should say. Thank you for the ideas. This is what I hope the task force will do holistically, think about everything that we need to do. And you mentioned several I think that are important. Finally, most importantly, we have 2 victims of catalytic converter theft, and they'll talk about their own experiences about how it affected them. And so I want to thank Maureen Nally for joining us today. Thank you, Maureen.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here anyway, just to explain how I became victim of this catalytic converter theft. I must say, though, you picked the right corner, because when you do get into your car in the morning and turn on your car, it sounds exactly like that airplane taking off is in your back seat. The noise is deafening. It's kind of crazy, bizarre, frightening. But one morning, just over a little over a year ago, I got into my car to go to work. Of course, no one should be late for work. However, I work as a firefighter in Jersey City, and you kind of can't be late. You're relieving a guy who's worked 24 hours. So I had to quickly figure out how I was going to get to work that day and not solve my car problem for another 24 hours. I just went in the house, jumped on my bicycle, not motorcycle, bicycle, and thankfully for Jersey City's bike lanes, I was able to get down there 2 miles to work just on time. However, my catalytic converter was stolen. I was lucky enough to have it replaced, but it only happened again 2 weeks later. So that black cloud does follow me, but hey, it happens to everyone. At the second attempt, they ruined my car even further, so it was not repairable. My car is, yes, still sitting in the driveway, but with that, my catalytic converter was stolen from my driveway, very well lit, very busy block in Jersey City, and my point is it can happen to anyone. I did realize that both times this happened to me was on a Sunday night when, this is for the police officers, the garbage truck came down the block, and that was so loud that maybe it had muffled some of their, their thievery, but it happened on Sunday nights. It didn't happen to not too many people other in my neighborhood, maybe 2 blocks away I heard of, but I appreciate your thoughtful outside of the box here of thinking of this legislation to take care of this problem. I have thought about what happens at the scrap metal place, like when people show up with multiple catalytic converters. Does someone ever say, where are the cars that go with these converters? But we can't blame those guys. We have blame the thieves. We're grateful. I'm grateful that you're putting a stop to this, and this legislation hopefully will go through. But if I can do anything, I'm always got my eyes open and ears ready to rock and roll. But I appreciate, here we go. It does sound like that in the back seat. Thanks again. I appreciate your legislation here, and
Thank you, Maureen.
take it easy. Thanks.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for your service as a firefighter as well. It just goes to show it can happen to anyone. I'm not sure that we can let the scrap metal people off that easy and simply say, well, I think they have to be responsible as part of the chain in this process. And then Dan Willenberg is the next victim, and he will share his story. Dan?
Thank you, Senator. So I'll be brief. I don't want to repeat anything that happened, but it was about a month ago, Wednesday morning at about 6 a.m., and I'm sleeping happily. My wife was sitting on the couch in the living room, and she says, "Hon, I think they stole our catalytic converter." I said, "What happened?" She said, "I heard bzzz, bzzz," and I looked out the window, and a car drove off. It was that fast. And that is what can happen. We had a doorbell camera. It showed the car drive off, but it doesn't show any detail enough. And that's what we found, is that our neighbors had doorbell cameras, but they're really designed to see the porch, and they don't get enough detail for the local law enforcement to generally catch the thieves as they go. One bit of advice: we were lucky. We had a very low deductible on our insurance. We were able to call the insurance company and, take the car in and get it replaced in a matter of days. But I know the mechanic told me there was somebody else there who was waiting a month to get a new catalytic converter back. And when you don't have the availability of your car, you can't get to work. It's a big inconvenience and a big cost for everyone. And it's traumatizing. And I'm grateful to Senator Menendez, to our local law enforcement, our sheriff's department for everything that they're doing, our legislators at the state level, to try to solve this problem and help people like my wife and me. Thank you.
Dan, you live in Fair Lawn, right?
I do.
In Fair Lawn. So Jersey City, Fair Lawn, doesn't matter where you live. It's a challenge for all of us. So, and the last point I'll make, I've gotten several notes on this from victims, constituents who are victims. And one of them said, I only have liability insurance. So therefore, I had to pay for the whole amount, and the whole amount to me costs almost $4,000. So it's really consequential in so many different ways. A firefighter who can't get to work that day, or luckily did because she used her other wheels, the bicycle. But a person who can't pick up the kid at school. The list is endless of the inconvenience and the consequences and the costs. And so that's why we have to do everything we can to put a stop to this epidemic. With that, I'm happy to answer some on-topic questions. Yes?
Senator, how can you hold scrap metal places accountable?
Well, I think that, as Maureen said, if somebody comes in with a bunch of them, right, at some point, there's you just didn't happen to pick these up on the road as scrap. So I think that they have to be held accountable in basically one, either rejecting the sale and notifying their local police department that there are people coming in seeking to make this sale. And that would help to trace us back to the person who is ultimately the thief. So giving them a clear path and just saying, well, listen, we just buy whatever comes in, well, that's not acceptable. It's the same thing like buying any other stolen property, right? You're not supposed to. It's illegal. So it should be illegal for the scrap metal people too.
They already know that.
They may know it, but doing something about it is a different consequence. We all know you're not supposed to go through the red light, but sometimes people do. And until you make a point of it by a police officer who catches them and gives them a ticket, then they won't think about doing it again. And the same thing with the scrap metal people. When there are consequences for your actions, then it's less likely that you will do it again. Anyone? We have to think about what the consequences are in terms of fines, penalties, and then if there's repeat realities, maybe even jail time. I think it's that serious enough a consequence.
Why not just go to direct legislation similar to what's been proposed in the state Senate in New Jersey that deals with some of the things you mentioned, regulating the chain of sale, having fines for people who buy without the proper documentation?
Yeah, we may get to that, but as in everything, I've been in public service, well, I'm not going to say how long now, but, a fair amount of time. And it's very easy to come to the quick conclusion that this is the solution. And what I've learned is that having a holistic approach to something, if you really want to deal with it in the long term, you got to look at all the different dimensions. So I'm open to all of the things. Sheriff Curriton, I think, had some good ideas. Some of the chiefs have some good ideas. I'm open to all of them and to place them into action. But what I really want is a multi-jurisdictional task force led by the federal government. Since we saw that there was a raid in 21 individuals in 9 states, it should tell you something about it. It's very often that these catalytic converter thefts ultimately go across state lines to sell their stolen goods. That automatically brings a whole different dimension to it. So I want to understand the totality of it. In the interim, we'll continue to work with law enforcement and others as we come up with ideas. We don't have to wait for the task force to make its full report, but we can ultimately get the type of comprehensive action that we want, and I think that's important.